I'm holding in my hands what might be the rarest album of the collection. It seems to be unique. I'm guessing it's not. But it's a piece of Soviet history, that I'm sure of, a relic of a bygone era. Hello and welcome to the Music with Matt podcast. This season, I'm going through the vinyl record collection that used to belong to Al, my late stepfather. As I'm listening to and cataloging each LP, I'm discovering so many interesting stories about the music and artists that I thought I'd share them with you in this podcast series. So I'm cataloging the albums. To do that, I listen to each album end to end twice over. I enter the details into my spreadsheet and move on to the next one. But then I came across the sorriest looking album of the lot. There's nothing on the cover. That is to say, there's no writing. It's old looking. There are 8 pieces of Scotch tape yellowed by time along the side edge. Each piece is on a different angle and randomly spaced. The top third of the cover is solid green, and the bottom 2/3 is a black and white photo of a nature scene. Nothing to indicate what kind of music it is, where it's from, who it's by. I wonder how anyone could publish such an album. From the look of it, I don't have high expectations. I turn the album over. The back cover has a white background with 3 columns of small typeface text that fill the middle half of the album. Russian writing is on the left column, English in the middle, and French on the right. I'm intrigued. Dmitri Shostakovich, Violin Concerto, Opus 99. My interest and expectations were already low, but they fell even more. I've heard of Shostakovich before. This is modern classical music, and modern classical music and I are not best of friends. I removed the record from the sleeve. Made in the Soviet Union is written along the bottom of the label. My interest is re-piqued. Maybe I'm not going to like the music, but how did it end up here? The LP is thick and heavy compared to most. The idea of collecting albums came from this one. It just seems so special to have it in my hands. The label design is cool too. The letters CCCP are in large font with a radio tower and a star behind the top of the tower, shooting out what could be rays of light or radio waves. It says the music was performed by the Leningrad Philharmonic Orchestra. Leningrad. Yes, this is a relic from another era. I listened to it. Twice. Found it difficult to listen to at times. Challenging even, and so I gave it a low rating. Then I started looking it up online. Found that there were 27 versions already listed. Almost every one has a different cover. My version was not even listed. I can see that it is similar to others here that were pressed in 57 and 58. Assuming this one is from the same era, I wonder what is happening between the Soviet Union and the West back then. What is the context of this piece? Wasn't the Western world in the heat of a Cold War with the Soviets? What about trade embargoes? How did this LP make it into Canada? Inquiring minds want to know. Have I got a propaganda relic in my hands? I need to know more about it. The dossier is open and the investigation begins. I started by reading the text on the back cover. When I catalog an LP, I don't always read everything carefully. I skim, and this one was skimmed for sure. So I dive in and look up some of the classical music lingo online. For example, this is a concerto and not a symphony. What's the difference? Well, and I quote here, a concerto is a composition that highlights a specific solo instrument, like the violin, piano, or cello, with orchestral accompaniment. End quote. Well, since I already had the Soviet Symphony Mystery in Progress, and I love the title, I decided to stick with it. The back cover text is not very helpful. No dates or context about the album or the performance. I turned to the interweb. Here are a few things that catch my attention. This piece was composed in 1947. But it was put on ice because Stalin didn't like it. After Stalin died in 1953, Khrushchev kicked off the period of de-Stalinization in the Soviet Union. So, this piece was updated and premiered on October 29, 1955. The recording that I have was most likely made November 30th, 1956. The violinist, David Oistrakh, and Shostakovich were friends. They worked on the violin parts together. Shostakovich wrote his first symphony, the one that put him on the map, international map, at the age of 19. Shostakovich and Oistrakh traveled abroad to perform in Western Europe and the United States. But was the record itself an item of the Cold War? I asked ChatGPT. It said, By the 1950s, the Soviet Union actively used cultural achievements as a tool in its propaganda arsenal. Classical music, especially works by Shostakovich and Prokofiev, was promoted to showcase the USSR's sophistication and cultural richness. The release of a Shostakovich Concerto abroad in 1957 aligns with Khrushchev's policy of peaceful coexistence, during which the USSR sought to enhance its international image without direct military confrontation. The USSR controlled the international release of its cultural products, often through government agencies like Melodia, the state record label. End quote. I'm convinced now that I was right about the propaganda suspicions, but maybe propaganda is too strong a word to use. I still don't know what year the LP was actually pressed, but it's heavyweight and the label text suggests the 50s. Will my learning its place in history translate into liking it more now? Would I change my rating? I initially didn't like this album. I rated it a 1. That's the lowest. It means I'd be okay never listening to it again. I have almost no number ones. So here it goes. Deep breath. If you'd like to listen to it with me, pause and listen to it and then come back. Here I go. Okay. Wow. What a difference it makes. I wonder if I was in a bad mood before. Maybe I was upset that I couldn't concentrate while I was working and listening to this piece in the background. Too harsh a criticism. This one demands your attention, and if you give it your attention, then you can hear the interaction between the violin and the orchestra. I thought the highlight of the first movement was a high note. He hits and holds this high note. I wonder if it's the highest note possible on the violin. It was beautiful to hear. In the second movement, I started imagining myself playing the violin because it was intense. Imagine that intensity. The third movement has a great opener, like a big announcement, and the fourth movement is almost like a dance. I really listened to the violinist this time, and I appreciated the technical abilities. I also better understood and appreciated the play between the dissonant tensions and the consonant resolutions. Well, before I sign off, I want to let you know that I wrote, recorded, and edited this podcast without AI. Then I gave all my research material to AI, and it created a podcast. I call it Botscast. For this episode, here's my question. I want to know if listening to the Botscast will change my appreciation of the music and my own interest in the album's history. Did I learn anything from the Botscast that I might have put into my own script? Here it goes. Okay, pause. Okay, wow, I really liked it. It had a bit of a slow start, but then they jumped right into an aspect of the relationship between Shostakovich and Oistrakh that I didn't pick up on before. I definitely recommend listening to this, especially the first 10 minutes. Lastly, in the episode description, you'll find links to Al's LP's classical music playlist on Spotify. Here I've taken one song from each album in the collection and added them to the playlist. There's a link to my feedback and survey form. And there's even a link to support me so that I can continue as a content creator. Thank you for listening and have a great rest of your day.